You just text me.
I do.
You're angsty.
Yeah. You're the Dear Abby of my life. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Basic AF. Tom Anderson and Jeff Battersby with you once again. Thanks for being here. Jeff, how are you, sir?
I am very well, Tom Anderson. Yeah, good. Got a little soccer in today. It's a beautiful fall day. It was cold this morning, man.
It was crisp
hat when I was starting to play, but sweat a little bit, and now I'm all good. So that's a good thing. So
Except
it's always a good day when
you're
there's
crippled.
soccer day. Say that again.
So you're pretty much crippled. That's what you told us before we started. It took you 30
I told
minutes
you it
to walk
took me
from
half
the
an hour
car
to get out of
to
my
the house.
car after the game because I was because I'm old and my bones and muscles don't recover like they did when I was a kid. So so I'm a little late, but whatever. We're here. And we're also here with our friend Joe Moyer, who we ripped off last time he was here because Apple decided to announce some stuff the same day that Joe was supposed to be on, and
which they nearly did again.
Nearly right.
Yeah.
If
we just squeaked it in.
But Joe is the journaling guide, and we're going to talk about journaling. So, Joe, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back. I must have done okay
pleasure.
the first time.
No. It didn't work. We're giving you a second chance.
Okay.
I think
All right. Thanks. I'll do my best.
It's okay. We're on chance 47, and it still doesn't work for us.
Right. We fake it every show.
Yeah. Which, by the way, dear listener, this is episode 47. Show notes can be found at basicafshow.com/47.
And at the top of the show, let's remind you that our show music, Psychokinetics, Celsius 7, we highly recommend that you check them out. And also our pretty brilliant podcast art, the logo, Randall Martin Design. And we still think it's the best looking art on any of the podcasts that we see.
And by the way, we do still have stickers and magnets. So if you would like one or both, hit us up. Be happy to send it to you. No charge on the house, as they say.
Right. We'll stick
Jeff
it to
covers the postage, so I don't care.
Right. And I'm up to my ears in money, so it's all good. No worries.
That's how it is. So,
stamps work.
A few episodes ago, when we did have Joe on, and the iPhone event kind of took precedence there, we were going to talk about journaling. And so we wanted to bring Joe back to have that discussion because that just happens to be his forte. And so, Joe, we're, again, thankful to have you back here with us for this episode. So why don't you, in case anyone missed the first go-round with you, why don't you do a little brief intro, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into journaling, and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, I'd love to. So I was journaling when I was younger. Throughout my 20s, I did a ton of journaling. Even younger than that, I was doing it, and I kind of fell off in my 30s. Life just got kind of busy. In many ways, it got simpler. I got a steady job, great girlfriend who I ended up marrying. So wasn't doing a ton then. And then I came back to journaling just about 3 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that, when our second kiddo was born. I just realized that I needed a little more reflection in my life. And, you have one kid and it's one thing, you add another to the pile, and it sort of changes the game a little bit. And I also took a break from work. So I started writing online too. So I started my website, 24 Letters. I actually remember coming up kind of with the basic idea right after he was born. I was still in the hospital, just kind of resting and hanging out. And journaling kind of came along with that. And at a certain point, I realized maybe what I was figuring out and learning is something I could share with other people. And that kind of took off when Threads launched. I was a day one Threads user. And I started on there as the journaling guide. And that slowly creeped its way into being more of the focus on the blog. And then I started a newsletter also called the Journaling Guide. And that goes out every 2 weeks. And I talk about all things journaling, whether it's some of the people in history who've been journaling, offering prompts or tips or ideas or motivation. And people seem to like it. I've gotten some really, really positive feedback. So I'm happy to share some thoughts with you guys today about it too.
Awesome. And we're happy to hear them. So I'm curious, you said you started journaling when you were younger, when did you first start journaling, and what precipitated that? What was it that got you started on keeping a log, or at least getting your thoughts down on paper?
That's a great question. I think I probably started when I was like 20 or 21. I was doing a lot of reading at the time. I was very interested in exploring the world, like a lot of people that age are. Still am. I've not lost that curiosity. And some of the people I was reading were kind of their writing was almost in the format of a journal. There is a writer. He does spoken word. He is a musician. His name's Henry Rollins. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So he was pretty influential when I was a younger man, especially. Tony Bourdain, when he first started his career as a writer. So my life was not nearly as exciting as either of those two guys. But I felt like I wanted to start writing things down, and very quickly found it to be helpful in a lot of ways. And I just kind of stuck with it.
What were some of the ways that you found it helpful at that time?
It was a great way to figure stuff out, right? When you're in your early 20s, in hindsight, now in my 40s, life was probably pretty simple, but you're figuring stuff out. You're experiencing things for the first time. And it was really helpful to just record thoughts in a private way. Although around that time, I was also doing some public blogging like we used to in the early 2000s. But it was sort of a safe place to put thoughts down, to figure out things about relationships with other people, relationships with myself, where I wanted to go, where I was coming from, just a lot of reflection. And some of it was also just day-to-day stuff, just kind of recording what I did that day, and kind of building my own narrative to figure out where I was headed.
Very cool. So 2 kids decide it's time to put things down on paper again.
Yeah.
Was it, strictly speaking, the fact that you're responsible for 2 little humans, or were there other things that moved you into the space where you wanted to put things down to understand yourself and those little people and your wife?
That was a big piece, because obviously your relationships change. When you have one kid, it changes. When you have another kid, it changes. I also took a break from work, which had a pretty significant impact on me. I wasn't aware of how important it was for me to go to work every day and have that connection and, frankly, that validation. So journaling really helped me parse a lot of those thoughts about, why was it so hard for me to stay home? Why did I really feel like I needed that external validation when I had 2 great kids and an amazing wife and a family here at home? So it was kind of just continuing the journey of what I was doing in my 20s and my 40s. And maybe I thought I had stuff figured out, and maybe I did, but I found a whole bunch of new stuff to figure out. And journaling has been the most effective way for me to do that.
That's amazing. That's really cool. Does your wife journal too?
She doesn't. She's dabbled in it, like I think most people I know, and probably most people on the planet. Like, she has a journal. Most of us have journals laying around somewhere, but I don't think she does it consistently.
Mm-hmm. And you do it every single day?
Yeah. So I do, every day I do just a gratitude journaling entry in day one, typically. It's quick. It can take a minute, 5 minutes. It doesn't take very long. And it is a daily habit that I really try to do every single day.
Okay. And Day One's the app that you're currently using as your primary?
Yeah. So I use Day One for, I don't know how many journals I have, but I have a bunch of them. And that's where I keep most of them. I do use Journal from Apple as well, which is a great little tool. Unfortunately, it's only on the iPhone. I did email Tim Cook to see if we could have it on the iPad. Haven't heard back yet. So I'll let you guys know. I thought about asking about the Mac, but that might be pushing it. So Day One is sort of my primary, but I also have print journals that I like to write into, because I think there's something pretty special about writing by hand sometimes as well.
Yeah, I agree with you. Very cool.
Yeah, Jeff, you're a journaler too, right? Yeah.
So that's an interesting question. In my late teens and early 20s, journaled quite a lot. I have a bunch of those journals still laying around, all by hand. What's interesting, if I look back at it, and this is, I think, one of the amazing things about journaling, is that at least for me, I have what I would call, I guess, a fair amount of sense memory. So I can read articles that I wrote, for Macworld or other places a long time ago, and I can remember the music that was playing at the time that I was writing those articles. Like I'm tied to that. The thing about reading my journals is I can pick back up on the internal things that I was feeling. One of the things, and I've never said this publicly here, but I've suffered from depression for a very long time, probably since I was in my early teens, but never saw it as such. It was never a thing that it wasn't a thing really that I started taking some medication for and going to therapy for until probably my late 40s, early 50s. It was just an edge of that I was hanging on to. And one of the things I recognized about my journals at that time, I was in very much a church environment, and there's a certain facade you got to place at the front, and in the background, there's other things going on maybe that you're not telling everybody. And so I do know that my journal, while not always transparent about those kinds of things, was I can still remember what it was I was going through when I was writing certain things. To the present, I don't journal technically. I write a ton. I write a ton every day, and a lot of that it is working things out, but it's not working things out in the same way that I would be working things out when I journaled. So the answer is, it's a very long way of saying that I do not presently journal. I have tried to use a couple of apps. I have to say that handwriting things for me is a better means of that. I'm a collector of notebooks. I have 1 million notebooks, and I have written notes in those things. Field notes. I could probably start a field notes store if I wanted to.
Oh, wow.
Because
they're great.
They're the best.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah, I feel like we need to add that to your bio on the show page. Jeff Battersby, collector of fine notebooks.
Yeah, that's a collector being the operative word. What I will say though is, I do a lot of theater in a variety of ways. I'm directing shows, I'm acting in shows, I'm stage managing shows, and when I am doing theater, particularly when I'm acting, I will keep journals around my character. To kind of gain a deeper understanding, of who that person is. So definitely within that realm, but not specifically what you're doing, Joe, which is, doing it every day. Tom, do you journal at all?
I do not. I think I've done maybe 5 journal entries ever.
You just text me.
I do.
You're angsty.
Yeah. You're the Dear Abby of my life. But and I was talking to Joe before we started. I'm like a prolific note taker at work. Mm-hmm. And that's, I guess, in some ways a form of it. But like for personal things, I don't really do that. But at work, like I take a ton of notes.
Well, and you also, and maybe this wouldn't qualify as journaling in a specific sense, but you do really map things out in a way that I don't. I carry everything in my head. So when dementia comes for me, I'm done.
I won't be able to find my files. So it's okay. But I'm done too.
You do, and you've shown me on many occasions, you think a lot on paper.
I do.
Or not technically paper, you think on an iPad.
Right. Yeah. So I'll start with, for things that, and I've shared pictures of that on Threads a few times, but if I have things that I need to kind of really think through, and again, it could be home projects, but it's not really like personal struggles, which maybe I should do that now I think about it. But home projects, work projects, anything, whether it's related to this podcast or whatever it is I do like to sit down and kind of start, with the Apple Pencil and sketching things out. And then eventually, if it's something that I really need to organize, it'll go over into MindNote as a mind map. And I'll hammer on that for weeks, and then I'll go back and look at it and update it some more. Because typically for those bigger things, it's something that's not going to be done quickly anyway. And so I can kind of bounce to it, come back, work on some things, go back, update it. And I really like that approach. It just helps me. That seems to fit the way that I think.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like you both journal. You just do it in ways that work
different
for you.
ways, right? Yeah.
I'm a big fan. I made the joke on the last show I was on about lighting the candle, and kind of going into your study and doing the journaling or the diary entry. Mm-hmm. And I actually got some feedback on that. People thought that was sort of humorous, but I think that's sort of the classical take on what journaling is, Dear Diary. But I really think journaling is a function of just figuring stuff out, and it can be however you want to do it. So you may do it in different ways, or it may serve different purposes, but I feel like what you're both doing is kind of serving a similar purpose.
Interesting.
Right. Yeah, and I think that might be part of the struggle people have with it too, is trying to fit, I don't do journaling because I don't sit down and write it into a day one or a journaling app or on some paper, or it doesn't fit this particular process that, like Joe, you just alluded to there, is kind of the journaling de facto definition, maybe. I think a lot more people do it than they think.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, and I think I think you can extend that then to any kind of creative act. Whether it's photography, which is photography really is documenting something that you've seen, or that has caught your attention. Painting. Any of these things that you're doing that's actually taking something inside of you and putting it into not necessarily a public place, but a place that's outside of yourself that you can then view it and think about it. So with that in mind, the hardest thing, for anybody doing anything is the blank canvas, the blank page, the blank, the getting started. So Joe, from your perspective, how is a good place to begin? Not so you don't have to have a notebook or anything like that. Like, what would you, if I were to come to you and say, "Hey, Joe, I really do want to start journaling," but I don't have a lot to say. I don't have a lot to put down on the page. Mm-hmm. It seems bad not to put something brilliant down. So how do I do it? What would you say to someone that was asking you about how to begin journaling? Yeah.
So I've had this conversation, and I think the first step is you have to believe and accept that your thoughts matter and they are worthy to be on the page or wherever you decide to put them. I like to say on some of my writing that your story matters and you need to start writing it down right now, right? Today. The other thing we get hung up on sometimes is sort of the perfect journaling fallacy or the perfect journal fallacy, where we have that really nice journal we got from the store and it's really pretty and, it's kind of the faux leather and, well, I can't write in that because the paper's too nice, right? So it goes up on the shelf and then you go get something else. And that's part of the we just like to collect notebooks. I think it's some sort of, sort of ancient thing that we love text, even if we don't write in them. But really understanding that your thoughts are worthy of being in that fancy notebook or anywhere. So the first step is to find something to write with and write on. You can be really agnostic about the tools you choose. You can grab printer paper and a pencil, right? It's really about just kind of getting started. The Notes app on your phone or even voice memos can be a great way to do it if you want to do it kind of more stream of consciousness and you don't feel like writing. And then you need a little quiet time, maybe 5-10 minutes of quiet time. It doesn't have to be perfect. It can be in the car in the driveway. If you're in an office environment, you can shut your door for a few minutes. Maybe that's where you find it. Before you're going to bed, when you're waking up, that's usually a good time. And then just write a thought. Try not to get hung up on the desire to be profound. You don't need to worry about being Shakespeare or writing like an emperor or something. Just write what's on your mind. And I've found that when you write one sentence, sometimes that's all you need, but oftentimes that's either going to trigger you to write a little more, or it's going to kind of help you move the stuff around in your brain so that next time you come back to that page, you might have another thought to add or another idea or another question. And, you talked a little bit about your mental health journey, Jeff, and I've struggled a little bit with that too, particularly after my second kiddo was born. And I'm not a mental health professional, but I really think that journaling can help sort some of that stuff out and kind of, getting started is not as hard as we think it is. We just have to understand that our thoughts are valuable and worthwhile, and they don't have to be for anybody else. So you don't have to impress anybody, but just putting them down on the page can really make a difference.
Yeah, I think that's a really important piece. I think one of the things you just said a second ago about the amount of time that you need, which is not a lot.
Right.
You can in 5 or fewer minutes put a thought down and have it be as simple as, it was sunny out today and I went to work.
Yeah.
And that's the temptation to be profound, I think that's one of the real difficulties. I think with any endeavor, that's creative, the need to be, as you said, Shakespeare.
Yeah.
But the need to really be eloquent, and you don't need to be eloquent. It doesn't need to be any more than that. And I think that's a really important starting point. I've never used Day One. I have played around with Apple's journaling app. I find that I really don't want to be journaling on my phone. The fact that you can now mirror your phone on your Mac, makes that a little easier. But one of the things I really do like about it is it will prompt you. You took a trip to so-and-so and you took some pictures. Why don't you write about that for a second? So what is it? You said that you use Apple's journaling app. You said that it sounds like Day One is your primary. What is it about Day One that makes that your most common go-to?
I've been using it a long time. I think I started using Day One for the first time back in, it must have been 2013 maybe. And then I really started using it again semi-regularly in like 2016, 2017. So I like that it's multi-platform. I like that it syncs. It's been around for a while. It doesn't really feel like it's going anywhere. It was sold a while back, but it seems to be pretty stable. I like the ease of creating multiple journals. I've got a bunch of journals, some of which only have a couple entries, but some of them are more almost project-based. And I also like that I can create templates. So when I open up a gratitude journaling entry shortcut on any of my devices, it just opens a new entry in the gratitude journal with the prompt that just says, "What are you grateful for today?" So it's digital though, right? So you lose some of that connection with the handwriting. So what I do when I write in my handwritten journal is I will just grab a photo of it and put it into Day One because I like to have it all there. So it's mostly personal preference, and it's what I've used forever.
Yeah, and I think the old adage about photography, what's the best camera you can get? The one that's with you, right? So having something close at hand where you can put that down, where you can put down those thoughts, it's really great. And it's funny. I don't think about a journal about being grateful, but it's a really simple thing, and that can be one or two thoughts. My kids, my wife, the fact that I can still get out of my car after I play soccer.
Even if it takes you a little while.
A half an hour, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And Day One's great, and I know Journal does this too, but I put photos in all the time. I just go and see what we did that day and drop a photo and a thought in. And it's nice to go back and look at that journal in particular over the years, because you see your kids growing up, or you see something fun you did. Some of the other journals, I feel like I've written in them and I've never gone back because I got what I needed in the moment, right? I figured out what I needed to figure out, and it's there if I ever want to go back.
back in the early blogging days, and I don't know if you're doing this now. I mean, I've been to your website, but I haven't looked to see. Do you post public journals? I mean,
No.
blogging would have been that. So your blogging would have been.
Yeah, I did. And it was mostly mundane stuff, or what you would expect kind of a 21-year-old to write about. And, like political stuff, music, movie,
Mm-hmm.
Henry Rollins.
Yeah. So, I saw him at the Egg in Albany a lot there, Jeff. So not too far.
No, that's not far at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's right up the road.
It was a little probably brooding, right? Because I was a 21-year-old who thought the world was out to get me. So
it was. I mean,
yeah, I knew it. Henry was right. But no, typically I write about journaling. I do try to share personal reflections. Same thing in the newsletter, but not so much the more personal stuff.
Yeah, and we talked there just a second ago about the gratitude component, and I think that's something that really is key for folks. I think there's so much negativity in the world today and in our personal lives, and it's so easy to beat ourselves up when we start something new, like, oh God, that episode sucked, or that edit wasn't good, or oh, my kids hate me because I didn't take them to the park, or whatever it is. And most of it is just nonsense. It's not true. But that negative self-talk is so defeating, but it's so easy to fall into rather than focusing on because part of it is because I think we overestimate how much external people care about those little things that we do or don't do, and that they don't care. Like the positive things, we don't think they care enough about, but the negative things we think they just focus on. And I think it's a big thing to be able to flip that switch. And it takes a lot of time to do it, because I used to be very bad with that. Negative self-talk, poor self-image, all of those types of things.
Me too. And I'm still not great, but I'm getting better.
Yeah, it's still a work in progress. I don't think you ever defeat it, because I think, especially if you start to stack some losses, right? Mm-hmm. Like we've had some health things here at the house, and my son broke his arm, my other son had the accident, 2 appliances went out. Yeah. 10 years ago, Tom would have been like, God, life sucks. This is BS, and you can't, all these types of things. And it's taken a lot of work. And a lot of that goes back to what we're exposing ourselves to, the information we see on social media. It's very easy because of algorithms. You go down a rabbit hole, and then, it's not, I don't believe it's like an evil thing necessarily that the algo is just going to feed you. It's just, because if you go look at happy things or positive things, we'll call them, reinforcement things, it'll feed you those too. So it's not going to necessarily just feed you the bad things, but it will if you keep going down that spiral. And so I think just be very careful with the things you're exposing yourself to, and the messages and the tone and the types, especially now we're in the most god-awful time of year, which is the political hype. Mm-hmm. And so
the politics stop.
Turn all that BS off, because just do it. And so, but I think if you can do that with your journaling and just start something simple with the gratitude component, to go back to that, for the day. Like Jeff mentioned there, I think a few minutes ago, Sunny, I went to work, or maybe Joe, you said that, I can't remember.
It was Jeff, yeah, but that's perfect. There you go.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a big thing. Right. It could be something little, because, I heard something, I forget where I heard it, but it was years ago, and it really smacked me in the face. And I think this may have even been what kickstarted me to go down this path, was someone stated, the next time that you drive by the hospital, look up at the windows, and there's going to be somebody laying in that room that would give everything to have the opportunity that you have today. Yeah. And I was like, man, that's a kick in the face.
Yeah, that's some real perspective.
It is. Yeah. And especially as you start to see, we're all kind of creeping up. So our parents are getting up there, or our friends or whatever. And it's really started to resonate with me. And so try to focus on that. But anyway, I've talked long enough.
No, it's good. It's good to hear. It's powerful. I think we have a bias for negativity. I don't know, if it's like, because we used to be hanging out in the plains and had to watch for lions and stuff. But I think you're right. If you go on to into social and you're just looking at cooking videos, you're just going to get cooking videos. But I think we have a tendency to be a little more curious about some of the stuff that's probably not as good for us.
Yeah.
And I think
it
we're
feels
often
good
more
to get tweaked up a little bit.
Yep. Until you're
it does
too high, right? And then you got
Right.
cortisol, baby.
Right.
Everybody loves a little cortisol.
Yeah.
Give me that drip.
Right. Yeah.
I was going to say too, we have a tendency, I think, to be more generous with others than we are with ourselves. And I think that that's almost universal for anybody that's a thoughtful person. You know, you're often, your interiority, what you're thinking in your head is often much more negative than you would be with anybody else. They're not things that you say. So I think journaling gives you the room to give yourself the grace to say, you know what, today was okay. You know, I was okay. Here's some things that I can learn. Here's some things that I can do. But overall, you know, I loved my family. You know, I heard some birds, you know, which is, you know, just to tell you how old I'm getting. I'm sitting in my backyard just watching birds.
That sounds great.
It is. I cannot tell you how calming that is, though. It's like, it's an amazing thing that we, you know, with earbuds in our ears and, you know, videos in our hand and the scroll, you know, you miss those things.
Yep.
They're entertaining, but they're not as peace-inducing as, you know, sitting in the yard listening to birds.
Yeah.
Yep. So, Joe, if, you know, people are listening and we're 30 minutes or so in and these things are striking chords with folks, how would you recommend they best start? What ways could they, you know, kind of start to slowly form the habit? Maybe some tools they could use or techniques that they could use is probably a better word.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we were just talking about how we're more critical of ourselves, and I think one thing to keep in mind is to treat yourself like your best friend. And if you can do that more often than not, it's going to be helpful, including with journaling. So I think starting with whatever tools are easiest for you to use and tools you prefer. So if you like to write by hand, find a notebook. If you're worried about the kind of the perfect journaling thing popping up and you don't want to get into that trap where you're the kind of person who you go buy the expensive notebook at the fancy stationery store, then go to your CVS or your Rite Aid and get a 99-cent spiral bound notebook. The message is going to matter way more than the medium, but the medium has to work for you. You could use audio. Again, you could record a voice memo, notes app. You don't have to spend any money either. Again, the printer. We all have a printer, even if it's in the closet we haven't used in 10 years. There's probably paper in there. Or your kids, go grab something from their room if it's a problem with being kind of overwhelmed by perfection. And again, find a little bit of time. You don't need a lot of time, but find some time. Try to find some quiet time if you can, because having a little bit of space is helpful for the process. In fact, I think too much time might not be a great idea either, because then you're just sitting there staring at the paper. So really trying to find the time and finding it when it's the best time of day for you. So I think a lot of people who do gratitude journaling do it in the morning. I do it at night. It just works better for me. And I seem to have the same effect. And then, write down what you want to write down. You can be profound. You might come up with profound stuff. The other day I was outside and I noticed the leaves are really crunchy, and I wrote that down. And I thought, that's kind of cool. Like, how many times have I walked through leaves in New England? But today I noticed that they're crunchy. The more you do it, I think the harder it gets, in a way where, not the harder it gets. I think it challenges you in a good way, because I'm very grateful for my wife and my kids, and I write that often. But some days I think I look a little deeper now, because I'm sort of aware that I might want to share this with myself at the end of the day. And then the last thing kind of on that subject is, you can tell people you're journaling, or you don't have to tell people you're journaling. It's sort of like therapy. So I've done a little bit of therapy in my life, and I told everybody, because I thought it was great. It helped me. Maybe it'll help you, right? But some people, they don't want to talk about that stuff. So journaling can be private. It can be something you share with your family and friends. I'm just the guy out here who decided that most people I've met would probably be better if they did some form of journaling reflection process. So I think that's a great way to start. Find tools that work for you. Keep it simple and try not to get hung up on perfection.
That's great. Good advice all the way around.
Thanks.
As Tom said, we're coming near the end of this episode. Just a reminder, where can we find you, Joe?
So you can find me on Threads. That's pretty much the only social that I'm active on. I'm at The Journaling Guide. You can get to the newsletter now by typing, I got the domain, so I finally linked that up. So you can go to thejournalingguide.com. And then my website is 24letters.net. And you can either type the numbers or you can spell it out. I got both because that day I was apparently extra crafty and thought ahead. So yeah, and feel free to reach out. This is probably a blessing. I don't get a ton of email from people, but if you have questions or thoughts, I'm always happy to chat a little bit about what you're doing and see if I can help.
Awesome. Well, Joe, thanks so much for coming on with us again. I think you and I going to kick Tom to the curb on this one. At some future point, are going to talk Apple TV Plus.
Right, I knew it. I knew that was coming. As soon as I was kicked to the curb, I knew what it was for.
Yeah. Well, Tom's like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
God,
I watched a 15-minute video.
And taken a weekend off.
Yeah, well, we could have, right? But we promised journaling. No,
Yeah.
It's really great to have you on, Joe.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Really grateful that you've deigned to spend your time with us.
I thoroughly enjoy it. So anytime you guys ask me on, I'll be here. Be happy to talk TV. Tom, you could join us. The engineer, right? So you could just be the engineer and
sure,
pithy comment here and there.
Sure, I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, we do really appreciate it, and thanks for the flexibility with kind of backroom talk. We had to rearrange the schedule a little bit, so appreciate the flexibility there and open invite. So if there's anything that you think of too that you ever want to discuss,
thank you.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back on.
I appreciate it, guys. Yeah, always happy to be flexible. Thanks.
All right, Jeff, you want to do the closing credits?
Sure.
Call.
So Tom is our engineer for all things sound and editing.
Sorry, Tom.
That's all right. No, that's an important note. We don't often give Tom credit for the work that he does. I'm the gentle listener. Tom will edit everything and send it to me, but
you don't understand how much I appreciate that, because I always stress like something's going to go out that's not right. So at least you listening to it takes that away.
Yeah.
There's a perfectionism thing that we talked about, Joe. That's not
Treat
so fun.
yourself like your best friend, even when you're editing a podcast.
Right.
So show editing is definitely Tom, as we said at the top of the show. Music, Psychokinetics, Celsius 7. Check them out. Celsius 7 does have a new, pretty chill album out within the last 6-7 months. So if you look for Celsius 7, you will find his fine work. Randall Martin Design is our show artwork. The two goofy robots, which look just like Tom and me.
Just like
it's true, right?
It's spitting image.
It kind of is sad to say.
Somehow,
as we like married. To say, even Tommy's sleepy eyes.
Yeah,
it's a dreamy podcast to be on, guys. I'm really honored.
And thanks to everyone for burning a half an hour or so with us. We really are grateful for everyone that's listening, and there are more and more people listening every day. So please, report us to the authorities, and by that I mean, make sure that you give us a rating on your favorite podcast app, and you can reach us via either feedback@basicafshow.com, or within your favorite podcast app, there's a link where you can send us a message. You can send us a message. Like some lady that I know asked me if I was playing games instead of working.
She was right.
She was. I was talking about playing the latest Switch game. Yes, Mom, I'm working. I promise.
I appreciate you looking out for me, Jeff's mom.
Anyway, so thanks so much for spending time with us. We're super grateful.
All right, that will do it. Joe, thanks again, sir. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
And listeners, we do appreciate you very much for being here. So until we talk again, have a great rest of your day or your night, whatever the case may be, and we'll talk to you then.
See ya.